Hi, hello. Welcome to the episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is March the 11th, 2025. Hopefully, this episode finds you well, in good spirits, and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. Today was a good day. The vibes were nice and right. Work wasn't too crazy, wasn't too busy. I even got to actually leave early, about not too early, about 5 minutes or so. But we had it felt ironic, it felt weird, uncanny-ish, I don't know. But we had a meeting, like an HR meeting, where you had to go and watch a video about diversity. So diversity in the workplace, why it's important, things to look out for, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. It's an annual thing that we go through, but it just felt weird given the climate of the times, our president, all that shit. But that being said, sat through it. It was easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We got out of there early. I would say the sweetest, the nicest thing that I would note on today, that was really a whole rose for me, was several people stopped. I don't I'm not gonna say, oh, it felt planned or anything, but it was just one of those things where several people today stopped me and said, "Hey, Isaiah, are you losing weight?" And I was just like, yeah, a little bit. I've been working at it, every day, just saying things. But it really did warm my heart to have so many people, lately really say, "Wow, look at you! You're really doing good. Congratulations!" Especially the way my body dysmorphia is set up. And a question I've been getting a lot is like, I bet you feel it, right? I bet you notice it, right? How different you look, because you look so different. And I tell them, honestly, it's kind of hard. I notice it at some points, in some moments. I would say the best indication that I really have changed actually has been the gym itself. Is the fact that I can do more, I can push harder, I can lift more. I think those are all things that remind me that I'm not the same person that came into Planet Fitness, to get that, that dealio, that $15, that $1, entry or whatever. You know what I mean? So I've really come a long way, and it's nice that people are noticing. It definitely helps. It's definitely a nice little, extra pat on the back for sure. But yeah, outside of work, we went to the gym. The gym was good. Still busy, but I was able to get all my machines in. Overall, just a good session. So we take it. We take those. Let's go ahead and do our startup, and let's get into some news. All right. First story comes from the Associated Press. Philippine ex-leader Duterte is being flown to The Hague to face charges of crimes against humanity. Not the card game. Philippine police arrested former President Rodrigo Duterte in Manila on Tuesday and sent him by plane to the Netherlands to face charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court, President Ferdinand Marcos said. The global court in The Hague had ordered Duterte's arrest through Interpol after accusing him of crimes against humanity over deadly anti-drug crackdowns he oversaw while in office. Marcos said in a late night news conference. Excuse me. Duterte had been arrested at the Manila International Airport Tuesday morning when he arrived with his family from Hong Kong. Walking slowly with a cane, the 79-year-old former president turned briefly to a small group of aides and supporters who wept and bid him goodbye before an escort helped him onto the plane. His daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, said she sought entry to the airbase where her father was held but was refused. She criticized the Marcos administration for surrendering her father to a foreign court, which currently has no jurisdiction to the Philippines, which is because Duterte made sure that they couldn't have jurisdiction because he pulled out. He pulled the Philippines out of the ICC because they were investigating him. Also, he uses the excuse of the fact that it's like, hey, this is an unnecessary investigation. The Supreme Court in the Philippines are already investigating me for all of my potential crimes, so they're already on it. Like, that's supposed to be a last resort. You guys are jumping the gun here. Though it's safe to say that the Supreme Court in the Philippines are not going to do anything. Also, this is an interesting development in the sense of Ferdinand Marcos had to allow this. And I want to say that was the last time we've talked about the Philippines, especially with any mention of Duterte, was back in 2022 when he took over in power. Now, there's been this whole alliance between the two families that have kind of kept them both in power and oscillation while, they're kind of going in and out. But that being said, it's been very Game of Thrones. I think something I haven't really mentioned with the focus on the Philippine Vice President, Sara Duterte, is that she made this really awkward, weird assassination comment against Ferdinand Marcos, but essentially she's saying hey, if anything happens to me, rest assured something's going to happen to the president. And that's such a bold ass fucking thing to say, but I guess she was really feeling the heat. That's led to an impeachment of her, but I think she's still currently vice president. That's an ongoing thing. We really haven't covered it. That's technically some other news, but I definitely felt like this was a good time to mention it. Let's see here. Marcos said, which is Ferdinand Marcos. Marcos said Duterte's arrest was proper and correct and not an act of political persecution, since the Philippines is a member of Interpol. But it's worth noting that since Marcos came back in power, he has not re-entered, the ICC or anything like that. He hasn't rejoined, but he said, hey, I will cooperate if you guys issue a red notice, which they did. So essentially he said, okay, well, yeah, now I will cooperate. He's saying it's not a political thing, but to me it does kind of feel that way. But that being said, I don't really care. I think this is good. Throw this motherfucker into the Hague. Let's see what fucking happens. Let's read a little bit more though. Among the most feared leaders in Asia while in power, Duterte became the first ex-leader from the region to be arrested by the global court. Scrolling ahead here a bit. Show me now the legal basis for my being here, Duterte asked authorities in remarks captured on video by his daughter, Veronica Duterte, who posted the footage on social media. You have to answer now for the deprivation of liberty. Which I think there's a certain kind of irony in that, because this is a guy who essentially allowed his police to just run roughshod on their own people and play judge, jury, and executioner, just because it's hey, we're trying to stop drugs and anything goes here. Let's just go nuts. And it didn't matter if people were actually guilty of doing a crime or whatever. And it essentially, as a Philippine civilian, you're stuck in a rock and a hard place here, where the cops are trying to kill you, the drug, gangs and people are trying to kill you. You could potentially get done up by a fucking vigilante. There's nowhere to turn. And you were going through this for years, and essentially Duterte just got to live in exile, walk it off with his little cane, happily ever after. Nothing was going to happen to him. So I'm glad that there's at least a chance for him to be facing some sort of justice here. Hey, we'll fucking take it. I'm sure there's more to be said on this, but I just really wanted to just kind of touch on it, highlight it a little bit. We have some more stories I wanted to get to, so we will go ahead and move on to Pakistan. The next story comes from Al Jazeera. Gunmen hijack train on Pakistan's Balochistan. Take hundreds hostage. Oh, also too, before we go any further, just rewinding back to situation in the Philippines or with Duterte. A good reference, I would say, if you want to learn more, just in a quick crash course with a couple of episodes, the Underworld podcast is a good one. I'm actually halfway through an update episode they were doing on this exact story. Literally, one of the dudes was in Manila, learning, interviewing people, getting stories and shit. And then also, I believe TrueAnon, another one of my favorites to shout out. Good resource. I'm pretty sure they have at least a couple of episodes on Duarte that are worth checking out. Actually, I know for sure they do because once again, another guy who actually went and like, if not on Duarte, but also like, just the Marcos family and all the shit they did to more or less rig and set up an election where like they were just set to win. People be damned. And not the fact that like it was just such a charm offensive, just an internet offensive that people were like, yeah, like this has to be the guy. This has to be the family. They could literally give us gold. But that's a whole other fucking conversation that we just don't have the time for. That's why I wanted to reference those. Anyway, let's fast forward back to Pakistan. Islamabad, Pakistan. Separatist fighters say they have attacked and seized a train in Pakistan's southwestern province of Balochistan, taking hundreds of people hostage. Railway sources confirmed to Al Jazeera that more than 400 passengers were on board the 9 coaches of the Jafar Express when it was attacked on Tuesday while traveling from the provincial capital of Quetta to the northern city of Peshawar. Provincial spokesperson Shahid Rin said an emergency had been declared at a major hospital in Sibi City, 160 kilometers or 100 miles southeast of Quetta, after reports of intense firing at the train. The Baloch Liberation Army, or the BLA, separatist group, claimed responsibility for the attack, saying in a statement that 6 military personnel had been killed. It added that security personnel were among those taken hostage and warned of retaliation if security forces carried out an operation. There's no immediate comment by Pakistan's military. The 1,600-kilometer or 994-mile train journey from Quetta to Peshawar takes more than 30 hours to complete, with more than 30 stops along the way. Now, I wanted to take a little bit of an aside here, just to kind of just think about that. As an American, we just don't have many trains around. Like, I mean, sure, if you go to certain, like, like you go to New York or whatever, they got a metro and things of that nature. But it boggles the mind to me to have a train that, like, you could just get on it and take, like, a long train ride and, like, get to where you needed to go. I mean, granted, there's a lot of stops, involved in that. But, I mean, still, that's better than a fucking Greyhound, I'm sure. It always is a vexing, interesting thing to me whenever we talk about trains and transport like that. Man, maybe one day, right? I highly doubt it. Shit. What was it today? Trump and Elon Musk were literally at the White House trying to fucking hawk Teslas because shit is so bad for them right now. I don't want a fucking Tesla. I don't want a goddamn RC car. I want trains. I want good transport. I want walkable goddamn cities. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's get back to Pakistan. The train service was resumed in October after a 2-month halt due to a BLA-claimed attack on the track in Balochistan. The province, which is rich in minerals and natural resources, has been home to a decades-long conflict between the government and ethnic Baloch separatists who demand secession from Pakistan. In recent years, there have been attacks against Chinese interests and nationals working in projects in China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a $62 billion development initiative. The attacks by the BLA and other groups have continued despite a number of military operations. Excuse me. They kind of go through for the rest of the article, kind of talking about some of the other things that the BLA has kind of done throughout the years. They've been very active. They've definitely pushed the initiative in terms of being like, hey, we're going to hit a lot of areas. We're going to be active all the time. We're going to be making the fucking news. We're going to be doing a lot of propaganda and recruitment because at the end of the day, we know that that's how we kind of keep this thing going and we keep hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting until we actually have, certified progress. Now, is that going to be something that, I agree with? No, it's definitely not okay to fucking kill people. Bad. You got to say that. But, you can understand that under oppression, how these things can fucking happen. And, like I said in a previous episode, I've been learning a bit about Pakistan a little bit here and there via the old podcast, routes. Maybe not the most effective, but hey, you do take a little crumb of knowledge here and there. But yeah, I don't want to say interesting. That might be the wrong word to use here, but definitely, an important thing I felt like I wanted to talk about, for today's episode. So there we go. Let's go ahead and take it to America. We got to talk about Trump a little bit, even though I just, I couldn't help but mention him and Elon Musty. But yeah, anyway, from the Associated Press, more than brick and mortar. DC begins removing Black Lives Matter plaza near the White House. Scarlett Thomas remembers coming down almost daily to the intersection of 16th and 8th Streets to protest police brutality and systematic racial inequities during the summer of 2020. They talk about a person named Bowie. On Monday, the 45-year-old Bowie, Maryland resident, returned to the site of those protests to mourn the end of Black Lives Matter Plaza. We're going to fast forward a little bit here. Crews started to work Monday to remove the large yellow Black Lives Matter painted on the street 1 block from the White House. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, which is a cool ass last name, announced the change last week in response to pressure from Republicans in Congress. The work is expected to take about 6 weeks, and the words will be replaced by an unspecified set of city-sponsored murals. Obviously, to me, this is very unfortunate. It's very sad. I mean, hey, if you're someone like Charlie Kirk, you're saying, hey, this is the end of mass hysteria in America. I guess. Cool, man, you fucking piece of shit gremlin. But to me, it's one of those things where we had so much shit going on in 2020. Obviously, this came in response to what happened to George Floyd. But seeing a mural like that was sweet as hell. You know what I mean? It was big. It was bold, yellow letters, across, literally multiple streets. And to see something like that was very encouraging. It was very inspiring. And to now see that it's just going to get just paved over pretty much. And I mean, sure, I'm sure the city murals, goddamn, I hope they're cool. I hope they're goddamn interesting. But it's a shame that once again, as part of this whole quote unquote common sense anti-DEI initiative that, aka culture war bullshit that the Trump admin is just trying to just spread and flood throughout to say, hey, we're really doing something for you guys. We're really changing America for the fucking better. It's sad. It's unfortunate. Once again, taking it back to the fucking blog up top, we're talking about goddamn diversity in the workplace. And I'm like, are we going to be doing this in the future? Like, who goddamn knows? And don't get me wrong, I don't want to get spun up or lost on this. At the end of the day, this is all symbolism, and it just kind of feels good. That at the end of the day, the corporation that I work for, the Washington, D.C. in and of itself, despite Bowser or whatever, they're not really doing shit for us, right? These are just things that feel good and you want to see it, and it's nice. It's heartwarming in its own goddamn way. I'm not deluded in that regard. But the stripping of this to once again now appease another group for their own sake of symbolism, whatever, and to say, hey, it almost implies that it's like, yeah, you guys don't matter anymore. We're done talking about this shit. It's over. It's in the back. And it just feels like it's a step backwards and not fucking forward, right? So that's why I wanted to take the time to talk about this shit. And, at least put it on the record for the podcast. You know what I mean? It's a thing that's happening. It's a bummer. We boo, tomato this shit. But am I surprised? No. At the end of the day, Trump is going to try to whitewash, power wash this shit as much as he can. You know what I mean? And all we can really do is just keep trying to stick together. But that being said, we're not done talking about Trump. We got to hang out in the Trump verse a little bit longer. Mea culpa. My apologies there. But from USA Today, Trump cuts education department in half after laying off 1,300 workers. The Trump administration is cutting roughly half the U.S. Department of Education's workforce through a combination of mass layoffs and voluntary buyouts, administration officials said Tuesday. More than 1,300 Education Department employees received termination notices Tuesday after 572 employees accepted buyouts offered in recent weeks in exchange for their resignations. The moves will cut the department from 4,133 workers when President Donald Trump began his second term in January to 2,183 workers. The significant cuts come as Trump is considering an executive order attempting to dismantle the agency as all federal departments and agencies are preparing large-scale reductions in force ahead of a Thursday deadline ordered by Trump. Linda McMahon, who I've pictured in the thumbnail, the newly installed education secretary, called the firings a significant step forward a significant step towards restoring the greatness of the United States education system. I cannot, like, it boggles the mind that Linda McMahon, wife of Vince McMahon, who we've covered before, fucking monster, piece of shit, is in the position she's in to literally lay low the education department, more or less single-handedly. Fuck that woman. I just don't have any other way to fucking say it. Boo, tomato, tomato. Yeah, I don't know. And once again, am I surprised? No. We've watched, America more or less say, hey, we don't give a shit about public schools. We really would love for you to take your kid to a private school. Something that you probably can't afford unless you're super fucking rich. But yeah, that's how you really want to have your kids educated. We don't want any of this public woke bullshit. No, fuck that shit. Boo. We don't like that. And it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican. Things seem to arc and push that way no matter fucking what. So it's a shame that you see, from a government agency, how you are trying to hollow it out, core it out, and essentially, fill it with loyalists or, leave it as laid bare as possible, lay low as possible, and, running on its, last legs and saying, hey, whatever, we're just gonna fucking move on and work with what we got, and we've saved so much money, right? No, we're still in the trillions of debt here. We're still in trillions of dollars of debt. But that being said, yay for that, I guess. I just don't see it. I don't see it how you're a person who voted for Trump, you're a conservative-minded person, how you can see a cut like this and say, hey, this is good for America. This is going to be great for education in the long run. No, you're taking away resources from the actual Department of Education, eventually from education of itself. You're trying to cut funding and shit in any way, shape, or form you can. Like, that's what we're seeing out of this administration. I don't get how you see that and go, yeah, this is going to be good for my fucking kid. The stories like this, for real, if I'm being honest with you, are sadly so validating why I don't have a child. You know what I mean? I remember for me, it was a big fucking deal. Like, I thought that was going to be a big part of my life, being a dad. But the idea... there's other extenuating factors there I don't need to get into. But, I can't imagine having a kid right now. You know what I mean? Or about to have a kid or whatever. It seems so grim. It seems so goddamn scary. Because, what are you putting him into? You know what I mean? A public system that's going to have even less resources than it had before? Because Lord knows, once again, a guy like me couldn't afford putting a fucking hypothetical kid through private school. No fucking way. Not to mention, who knows what they'd be learning under that situation. It's so frustrating. It's very sad to see. But there's a part 2 here that I wanted to go ahead and cover in terms of these department cuts, these government cuts. From Huffington Post, Trump cuts at VA incredibly disrespectful to veterans. Vet. The Trump administration cuts to the Department of Veteran Affairs have devastated the workers who lost their jobs and raise fear that the quality of veterans' health care will decline in years to come. Because we all know it's been so good now, right? No, it's been fucking terrible, sadly. And it's only slated to get fucking worse here. 2 rounds of layoffs at the VA in February left more than 2,000 workers without jobs, part of a broader mass firing across government agencies led by the White House in its Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Fucking doggy ass motherfucking department bullshit. Most of those workers were probationary employees who had less than a year or 2 of tenure and lacked stronger job protections. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is considering much deeper cuts at the VA in the weeks to come. A leaked memo, first reported by government executive, calls for the agency to work with DOGE in eliminating some 83,000 jobs. 83,000 additional jobs, part of a massive reduction in force that would return the VA to its founding level 6 years ago. The agency employed around 470,000 workers as of December. The firings at the VA don't just impact veterans' services, they also hit their employee prospects, since veterans make up an outsized share of the VA workforce. Nearly 30% of the agency's workers served in the military, compared with around 6% with a broader civilian labor force. This is another thing that is very heartbreaking to see. Imagine serving your country, putting your whole ass fucking body on the line, and fast forward to fucking now, and probably, at least in a lot of these motherfuckers' cases, the person you voted for is essentially trying to make it harder for you to get the benefits that you rightfully fucking deserve. He's saying, fuck that, fuck you, man. I don't give a shit. Somehow, some way, it's gonna be better. Just trust me. Do you trust him right now? I'm very curious. I couldn't imagine. I really fucking couldn't. It's a shame that this is just becoming the norm now, that we are seeing this Trump 2.0 just once again pouring out the whole government, and to like just raucous applause from the people who voted for him. Like, they're like, yeah, this is so good. I hate the government. I'm happy to see this. Knowing that this is like literally taking money out of your fucking pocket, services out of your fucking life, dude. Like, it's crazy to me. To raucous fucking applause. It's really goddamn sad to see and talk about, for real. But what can we do? What can we do? We can only just be alert and be aware and keep it moving, lockstep together. That's all I can fucking say, right? But anyway, we have one more thing I wanted to cover, so let's go ahead and move on to our last break, and we'll go ahead and close it out. I know usually I start with Ukraine, but I figured, hey, we'll finish with Ukraine. And, depending on who you are, how you want to look at it, maybe this is good news. Maybe you can say, hey, this is a dub for Ukraine, potentially. But we'll get into it. We'll dive in. Oh, yeah. Whew. Also crazy. I know I keep going back to the Philippines. Crazy I didn't mention the fact yet again that Ferdinand's whole last name is Ferdinand Bong Bong Marcos. What a fucking goated name. Piece of shit, by the way. Can't stress that enough. Fuck him. Fuck the family on that shit. Fuck the Duarte's too. Gotta say it. Tomato Town for all of them. But damn, Bong Bong Marcos? That hits. That does hit. That is a name that you want to believe in, right? Until, he fucks your country. Anyway. All right, I'm talking shit. From CBS News, Ukraine willing to accept 30-day ceasefire with Russia as U.S. lifts freeze on aid and intelligence. The U.S. and Ukraine said Kyiv would accept a 30-day ceasefire with Russia after talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, with Washington pledging to immediately lift a freeze on intelligence sharing and military aid to Ukraine. Ukraine expressed readiness to accept the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire, which can be extended by mutual agreement of the parties, and which is subject to the acceptance and concurrent implementation by the Russian Federation. The U.S. and Ukraine said in a joint statement released by the State Department. The United States will communicate to Russia that Russian reciprocity, I almost didn't say that word correctly, reciprocity, yes, is the key to achieving peace. The agreement came after more than 8 hours of negotiations between Ukrainian officials and U.S. delegation led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the Saudi city of Jeddah. Dude, Saudi, like, someone mentioned this, actually, I think I'm referencing TrueAnon here, that, like, Saudi Arabia is becoming, like, the new Switzerland. And I'm like, damn, that definitely starting to feel very true. They're starting to become, like, the hub, the place to be if you want to fucking hash out some peace deals or some shit. If not Saudi Arabia, then, like, Qatar or whatever. It's like, hey, we can kind of just really get in the gully out here, in the Middle East, I guess. That's the new meeting point. The agreement came after more than 8 hours. I'm trying to read that. My bad. I'm running it back. The statement said the U.S. will immediately lift the pause on intelligence sharing and resume security assistance to Ukraine. Both were frozen in the wake of an explosive meeting between Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and President Donald Trump at the White House on February 28th, where apparently Zelensky did not say thank you enough, and Trump tells him, "You don't have the fucking cards. You don't have the blackjack. You can't hit 21 right now." Also, a bit of, once again, side news. I believe there was another really big missile drone strike situation from Russia onto Ukraine that took place over the past few days. Pretty massive, pretty major, especially in the situation where, in a lot of ways, Ukraine has been blind fighting since, the whole fucking kerfuffle took place. And, the U.S. turned off the spigot on information and aid. They've had less resources. They've been less prepared in that regard. So I imagine that that's an added thing that was like, hey, no, we definitely need to come and kiss whatever ring, we'll do it. The now unfrozen military aid includes roughly $1 billion in equipment that was approved by the Biden administration and has not yet been delivered. The Trump administration has the authority to provide another $3.8 billion in aid, but has not announced any further aid packages. Ukraine has been buoyed by the U.S. and other Western allies in its fight against Russia since Moscow launched a full-scale invasion in 2022. The move to cut off aid left Kyiv at a disadvantage and European allies scrambling. Whether Russia will support a ceasefire remains to be seen. Steve Witkoff, Mr. Trump's Middle East envoy, plans to visit Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Sources familiar with the planning told CBS News. Witkoff met with Putin for more than 3 hours in February. So we will see how things go. I'm just going to kind of close it here. Definitely an interesting development. I'm also curious, too, because they still need to fully sign the agreement, I believe, right? So is Zelensky going to come back to America, come back to the Oval Office, and we're going to try to run this shit back again? I'm very curious. And is it going to play out? I imagine it won't play out the same way. I imagine Zelensky will just zip the lip. I don't know. Once again, though, I need to mention, I don't think he said anything wrong in that regard. He was just fucking, saying his shit that he's been saying, and essentially JD Vance felt the need to add on and pile on, and of course Trump was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pile on, add on too, and then kick you out of my fucking shit, which was fucking crazy. As always, we live in goddamn interesting times, no? Anyway, that's where I'll leave it for today. If you'd like to help out, support the effort, I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Isaiah News. Become a newsie today. Free ways to hit me up, IsaiahNews1@gmail.com. Feel free to follow me or the podcast on any of the socials. Hopefully subscribe to the YouTube. That's a free way to help out, support the podcast, support me, and the grand algorithm in the sky. Also follow, as the kids would say, on TikTok. And I'm also available on Spotify. That's kind of like the main hub. That's where we kind of post out of, I guess, initially. That's ground zero. That's HQ. Follow there, leave a like, leave a cool comment. Sharing is caring. If you're on Spotify or you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. We'd love a 5-star review. Give me all the stars. And thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for being a friend. And hopefully I'll see you soon for some more good news. I love ya. Bye-bye. Mwah.